At 6:15 hours, September 20th, 1944. Aracourt, France. Mud clings thick to a rickety airstrip, fog swallowing the fields where German Panther tanks advance like steel predators on trapped American troops. Crouched beside a flimsy Piper L4, Grasshopper, Major Charles Carpenter stares into the white void, and nothing about this moment makes sense. He's 32, a high school history teacher from Moline, Illinois, who once lectured teens about ancient battles from a podium. Now he's 47 combat sorties deep in a war where young men burn inside Sherman tanks, and his tiny observation plane, fabric-covered 65 horsepower, a glorified crop duster, has 6 M9 bazooka launchers bolted to its wing struts. This was never what the L4 was built for. 2 days prior, the German 5th Panzer Army unleashed 262 tanks and assault guns on Combat Command A of the U.S. 4th Armored Division, and the odds were bloodily stacked. A Panther's cannon punched through Sherman armor at 1,200 yards. The U.S. 75mm gun needed 300 yards for a kill. Most Sherman crews never got close enough to fire. By September 18th, fog rolled in before dawn, the Germans using it as a shield. Carpenter took off at first light, only to find the ground vanish beneath white. He circled blind 90 minutes, and when the fog lifted, 11 Shermans burned around Lonville. He watched crews bail out. Some made it, most didn't. One Sherman's ammo storage was hit. The explosion sent its turret flying 40 feet. A loader stumbled out, uniform ablaze, took 5 steps and collapsed. Carpenter could only mark the position and radio it in. Helpless. Useless. A history teacher watching history unfold in blood. No way to fight back. September 19th brought no reprieve. The 113th Panzer Brigade smashed American outposts near Aracourt. By midnight, 43 Panthers were damaged or destroyed, but the Americans were spread thin across 12 miles of farmland, and the German war machine kept coming. For 3 months, Carpenter had circled with binoculars and a radio, watching soldiers die, the weight of inaction gnawing at him. Then he heard of Lieutenants Harley Merrick and Roy Carson. They'd mounted bazookas on their L4s and taken out 2 German trucks. Trucks. Carpenter wanted tanks. He found an ordnance tech and crew chief crazy enough to help, jury-rigging 3 M9 launchers to each wing strut, angled 20 degrees upward, electronic triggers wired to the cockpit, single fire or full salvo. The crew chief named her Rosie the Rocketer. Every other L4 pilot in France called it suicide. The math was a death sentence. The L4 weighed 765 pounds empty, max payload 232 pounds, only a pilot, no radio. 6 launchers, 15 pounds each, and 18 M6A3 heat rockets, 3 pounds apiece, left the plane overloaded by nearly 90 pounds. Bazooka rockets spewed 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit exhaust. Nobody knew if the cotton wings would catch fire, if the overloaded Grasshopper could pull out of a dive steep enough to aim, if this would work in combat. The Germans barely bothered shooting at L4s, cubs they called them, too small, too harmless, just artillery spotters. But Carpenter was tired of being harmless, tired of watching. So on that foggy morning, he climbed in alone. No observer, no radio, just him, 18 rockets, and a plane that wasn't supposed to fly, let alone fight. The engine coughed twice, then sputtered to life. He released the brakes and Rosie lurched forward, every extra pound fighting the tiny engine. By noon, he'd either be dead or he'd rewrite how the Cubs fought this war. No middle ground. The Grasshopper clawed through fog at 400 feet per minute, 200 slower than max, weight sapping every bit of performance. Carpenter leveled at 1,500 feet. White nothing all around, throttling back to 75 miles per hour cruising speed. Fuel, 12 gallons, 3 hours of flight. He left at 0642. By 0930, fog still clung tight, and Rosie handled nothing like the gentle spotter he knew. Launchers created brutal drag, rockets adding unbalanced weight. Shallow banks felt sluggish, fabric wings creaking when he nudged the nose down 5 degrees. Bazooka tubes caught the wind, pulling the plane off course. This wasn't a Cub anymore. This was a crude, untested weapon, alive with anger. At 0953, fog tore apart in patches and Carpenter glimpsed the ground. Fields, trees, the Rhine Canal glinting gray. He dropped to 1,000 feet, starting a systematic search, north to south, east to west, hunting for German armor. Combat Command DA held Aracourt and surrounding villages. The Germans attacked from every direction, trying to encircle them. Carpenter's mission, find their next massing point. He had no idea how soon he'd find it. By 1107, fog cleared enough to see roads, and he spotted movement. 3 miles northeast of Aracourt, a German column, partially hidden in tree line. 6, maybe 7 Panthers, flanked by armored cars, infantry on foot, advancing southwest on American positions. Carpenter checked fuel, enough for one attack run, 90 minutes to return to base. The M9's effective range was 300 yards, rockets traveling 265 feet per second. Gravity and wind warping trajectory beyond 100 meters. To hit a tank, he'd have to get very close. The 20-degree upward angle meant a 30 to 35-degree dive to aim at the ground. He'd use the entire plane as a sight, fire at 100 meters, and pull up before infantry opened fire. One mistake, 1 second slow, and the fabric wings would be shredded. He climbed to 1,200 feet south of the column, sun at his back to blind the Germans. Panthers moved slow through uneven terrain, still shrouded in ground fog, his only advantage. Carpenter pushed the throttle, nosed over. The Grasshopper accelerated in the dive, 80 then 90 miles per hour. Wings vibrated so hard he felt it in his bones, bazooka tubes screaming in the wind. Now he saw the Panthers clearly, turrets traversing, commanders in hatches, scanning the sky. Not for him. He armed the right-wing outboard launcher, thumb on the switch. 150 meters, Panther growing in the windscreen. 120 meters, treads churning mud, machine gunner at his post. 100 meters, Carpenter pressed the switch. The M6A3 ignited with a frame-shaking crack. 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit, exhaust shooting back, missing the wing by inches. The rocket streaked for the Panther, white smoke trailing. Carpenter didn't wait for impact. He hauled back on the stick, Rosie clawing for altitude. Slowly, too slowly. Below, German infantry opened fire. Small arms, machine pistols, rifle rounds snapping past the cockpit. One punched the left wing's fabric, another hit the tail. Carpenter climbed to 300 feet, firing, stopping at last. He leveled at 800 feet, glanced back. The lead Panther was still. Black smoke billowed from its engine deck. Immobilized, not destroyed, rocket hitting thin top armor or crippling the engine. The rest of the column scattered into defense, infantry pointing skyward. At him, at the tiny cub with bazookas that attacked a Panther. The Germans would never ignore the L4s again. Carpenter had 17 rockets left, a bullet-riddled plane, and a target on his back the size of the Aracourt battlefield. He turned Rosie northwest to Lonville's American airstrip, fuel gauge reading 9 gallons. Enough for reloading and one more sortie, maybe 2 over friendly territory. Bullet holes were small, fabric holding, controls normal. He descended to 100 feet, hugging terrain, trees and ridges for cover. The Germans knew now, the Cubs could bite. He touched down at 11:58, ground crew swarming before the propeller stopped. They saw bullet holes first, then the empty bazooka tube. A crew chief climbed the wing, fabric scorched black, but intact. No burn-through. The metal tube channeled exhaust away. The crazy design worked, barely. Reloading took 14 minutes. 6 new M6A3 rockets, 3.38 pounds each, 19.4 inches long. Blunted noses to avoid deflection. Shaped charges piercing 3.5 to 4 inches of armor. The crew chief asked what he hit. One Panther immobilized. How close? 100 meters. The crew chief shook his head. Insane. Carpenter shrugged. Effective. At 12:19, he took off again. Fuel at 11.7 gallons. No full fill in the rapid turnaround. 18 rockets total. 6 expended, 12 left. He climbed to 1,200 feet, turned east to Aracourt. Fog was mostly gone, Visibility 5 miles. German positions were exposed and ready for him. Surprise was gone. 1,241 hours. September 20th, 1944. Aracourt's gray skies were clear, and Carpenter's eyes scanned the tree line east of Bazooka-equipped for steel. He found it fast. 8 Panthers moving south, half-tracks with infantry trailing, elements of the 111th Panzer Brigade, flanking Combat Command A's vulnerable lines. Carpenter radioed coordinates to command. Artillery acknowledged, but he knew it wasn't enough. Artillery took time. Ranging, adjusting, walking shells onto target. And the Panthers would be gone before the first round landed. The Americans needed help now, and nobody else was coming. Carpenter attacked immediately. He climbed to 1,500 feet, positioning for a southwest dive, sun still at his back. Panthers spread 400 yards of road, and he locked onto the lead tank. Same plan, same risk. Only the Germans knew he was out there. He pushed the throttle, nose down 35 degrees, accelerated into the dive, and armed the launcher. This time, gunfire started early. Machine gun rounds streaked past, tracers arcing red, heavier, more coordinated. The Germans were ready. Something hit the engine, cowling with a metallic clang. The Continental engine coughed, sputtered, then kept running. Carpenter didn't hesitate. At 100 meters, he fired, hauled back, banked hard left, Rosie lurching as he evaded. He circled wide at 1,000 feet, glanced back. Led Panther stationary, smoke curling from its engine. Immobilized, not destroyed, another delay for the German advance. The columns scattered, infantry pouring from half-tracks, some setting up anti-aircraft emplacements. They weren't just shooting at him, they were hunting him. Carpenter had 11 rockets left, his plane taking fire. But the Panthers still threatened the American line. He lined up a second pass, diving for a Panther that had pulled off the road. Turret turned on U.S. positions. German infantry opened fire at 120 meters, and Rosie shuddered. Fabric ripping behind him, a sharp tear that dropped his stomach. He fired anyway, pulled up hard, tracers zipping past the canopy. He leveled at 800 feet, checking instruments, oil pressure and temp normal, controls responsive, except the rudder, mushy and slow. He glanced back, and his breath caught. The second Panther was burning. Flames poured from turret hatches, thick and orange, crew bailing out, uniforms smoldering, scrambling for cover. Destroyed. Confirmed. For the first time that day, his tiny bazooka plane had killed a Panther. But victory cost. Tail fabric torn, one elevator cable frayed to a strand, rudder lagging with every input. 2 Panthers down, 10 rockets left, plane damaged, Germans setting up dedicated anti-aircraft around remaining armor. One wrong move, and Rosie would burn. Carpenter turned west to Lonville. Damaged rudder making turns a struggle, overcompensating with ailerons. Rosie slipping sideways in every bank, wings creaking. Fuel, 7.2 gallons, enough to reach base with minimal reserve. Engine still smooth, but oil temp 5 degrees high, a small leak from the cowling hit. Not critical yet, but it would be if he stayed. 10 minutes from the airstrip, ready to land and repair, when his radio crackled, urgent and panicked. 1,321 hours. Combat Command. German armor bypassed forward lines, trapping a 4th Armored Division Waterpoint crew 3 miles east of Aracourt. 20 men, no heavy weapons, just rifles and pistols. Panthers closing fast. Artillery couldn't reach them without hitting Americans. Air support tied up elsewhere. The crew requested any assistance. They had minutes to live. Carpenter checked his position. 4 miles from the trapped men, 6 from base, 10 rockets left on a plane, barely holding together. The smart call: return, land, fix, reload, come back with backup. The only call for a rational pilot. But the transmission replayed. 20 American soldiers had minutes, maybe less. He was a history teacher, not a hero, but a soldier too who'd watched too many brothers die. He turned Rosie east, throttle wide open, engine roaring, oil temp climbing another 3 degrees. He was going back into the fight, no other choice. He descended to 500 feet, hugging terrain, tree lines, and dirt roads guiding him to the coordinates. Rosie shuddering with turbulence, frayed cable rattling, torn fabric flapping. He was flying a death trap. At 13:34, he spotted the water point. 5 trucks in a tree-lined clearing, Americans huddled behind them, rifles pointed northeast. Then the Panthers, 4, advancing slow, 800 yards out, infantry beside them, guns ready. The Germans had learned. As soon as Rosie appeared, all 4 Panthers stopped, turrets skyward. Infantry scattered into defense, machine guns locked on his flight path. They were waiting, ready. This wasn't a surprise attack anymore. This was a gun battle, and Carpenter flew an unarmed fabric plane against 4 Panthers and a swarm of German infantry, cotton and hope against steel and fire. He climbed to 1,800 feet just outside small arms range and hovered, watching Panthers advance on the Americans. 750 yards, 700. Americans fired rifles, bullets bouncing harmlessly off armor, a futile, desperate gesture. Carpenter had 2 options: attack and almost certainly die, or circle while 20 soldiers perished. His right hand moved to the switches, arming all 10 remaining rockets. He'd fire everything in successive passes and pray Rosie held on. No retreat, no second chances. This was it. He pushed the throttle, nose down 38 degrees, steeper than ever, damaged rudder making descent wildly unstable, fighting the stick to stay on target. The airframe vibrated violently, something loose in the tail clanging metal on metal. 95, then 100 miles per hour. The lead Panther filled the windscreen, German commander in the hatch, scanning the sky. Infantry opened fire at 200 meters, far earlier. They'd studied his pattern, his dive, his range. Tracers converged on his path, a wall of lead, and Carpenter squeezed the trigger, firing 2 rockets at once. Rosie bucked from recoil, his shoulder slamming the cockpit wall. He hauled back on the stick, and the frayed elevator cable, damaged in the second attack, partially separated. The stick went mushy, nose rising, far too slow. He was below 400 feet when he passed over German lines, rifle fire slamming into the plane from every direction, fabric tearing, metal pinging from rounds. He climbed to 600 feet, firing fading, and checked. Both rockets hit near the Panther, dirt and debris flying, but the tank kept moving. Slower maybe, but still a threat. Immobilized, not stopped. Instruments screamed now, engine sputtering, oil temp deep red. Definitely a leak, maybe worse. Fuel, 5.8 gallons, not enough to return if he stayed. The tail felt like it might tear off, fabric flapping loud over the engine. 8 rockets left, 3 Panthers advancing, 20 soldiers trapped, and the Germans were coordinating, waiting for his next dive to kill him. Carpenter had 30 seconds to rewrite his plan, or the water point crew was dead. The Germans expected a high dive, guns aimed skyward, machine gunners scanning clouds, Panthers 600 yards from Americans, turrets on the clearing. Carpenter smiled, cold and tight. They looked up. He'd come from below. He dropped to 200 feet, terrain following altitude below their anti-aircraft range, and flew west, tree line for cover, 80 miles per hour, damaged elevator making level flight a constant fight. Engine temp pinned red, oil pressure dropping. Minutes before the Continental seized, he closed to 600 yards, popped up to 300 feet, and nosed into a 40-degree dive, steeper than any before. The angled bazookas meant a steeper dive aimed a rocket straight at the tanks, and the lead Panther was 200 yards from the Americans, cannon aimed at the largest truck. 1 high-explosive round, and half the crew would die. Carpenter armed 2 left-wing launchers, closed in. German infantry spotted him at the last second, swinging weapons down, but too late. At 130 meters, he fired both rockets. Recoil nearly stalled the engine. Carpenter shoved the throttle to stop, hauling back on the damaged elevator with all his strength. The nose rose barely, clearing the Panther by 70 feet. Both rockets hit, one the turret ring, the hull's weak point, the other the thin top armor of the engine compartment. The Panther stopped dead, flames erupting, crew hatches flying open, tankers bailing out with smoking uniforms. Destroyed. Confirmed. Carpenter didn't climb. He stayed at 300 feet, turning for the second Panther. Germans confused, anti-aircraft still aimed skyward as he attacked below their lanes. He armed 2 right-wing launchers, closing in. The Panther turned its turret on the clearing, oblivious to the threat at its side. At 110 meters, he fired, banking hard right, machine gun fire ripping the left wing, fabric tearing free from the forward lift strut. The wing held. Barely. One rocket missed, the other hitting the turret side at 30 degrees, perfect for the shaped charge. Penetration. The warhead detonated inside a secondary blast as ammo cooked off. The turret lifted 6 inches, settling crookedly, crew escaping the bottom hatch, the tank in flames. 2 Panthers destroyed, 2 left, 6 rockets remaining. Remaining Panthers 500 yards from Americans, infantry hitting the ground, some retreating. They'd watched 2 tanks die in 90 seconds to a tiny fabric plane, fear spreading. But the tanks kept moving, cannons on the clearing. Carpenter armed 2 more rockets, engine shaking badly, metal on metal grinding from the cowling, temp gauge maxed. 1 more attack run before the engine failed. He dived for the rear Panther, partially hidden by the lead tank, fired 1 rocket, saving the rest for the last. It hit the track assembly, the Panther slewing left and stopping. Immobilized, not destroyed, crew still firing the turret. 5 rockets left, 1 Panther remaining, 400 yards from 20 soldiers. And Carpenter's engine was seconds from catastrophic failure. Oil smoke poured from the cowling, black clouds obscuring the windscreen, propeller vibrating so hard he could barely see. The Waterpoint crew fired everything at the last Panther. Small arms, grenades, useless against armor. The Panther 350 yards from the clearing, Carpenter seeing individual soldiers behind trucks, faces tight with fear. They'd stopped firing, conserving ammo, preparing for the tank to overrun them. The Panther's turret locked on the largest truck, cannon barrel elevating, 1 high explosive round, and everyone in the blast radius was dead. Carpenter turned the dying Rosie toward the last tank. This was the final pass. The last Panther sat 350 yards from the Aracourt Waterpoint clearing, cannon aimed at a truck full of American soldiers, commander in the hatch scanning for resistance. To the trapped 20 men, it was an unstoppable juggernaut. To Major Charles Carpenter, it was a target, his target, and his Piper L4 Grasshopper, Rosie the Rocketer, was dying, every system screaming, every part fraying, but she was still flying. That was all that mattered. Oil smoke billowed from the cowling, obscuring the windscreen. Propeller vibrating so hard it blurred his vision. Metal on metal grinding from the engine. Loud, violent. The Continental 0170-3 moments from seizing. Damaged elevator barely responded. Rudder slow and mushy. Left wing fabric torn free from the lift strut, flapping wildly. 5 rockets left. Engine on the brink. A Panther about to kill 20 brothers. No fancy dive. No careful aim. Just raw, desperate courage and the math that had gotten him this far. Stay low. Attack fast. Never give them a clear shot. The Panther's turret locked on the truck, gunner lining up the shot. Carpenter descended to 150 feet, his lowest attack altitude yet, coming from the east, the tank side, where armor was thinner than the front, Americans unable to see him, German crew oblivious. He saw the full hull, treads churning mud, machine gunner at his post. The engine seized for 2 seconds, propeller stopping dead. Complete silence except for wind howling through torn fabric, a high, lonely wail. For a heartbeat, it was over. Then the engine caught again, grinding, clattering, dying, but not dead. Just enough life for one final attack. Carpenter armed all 3 remaining right-wing rockets, every last bit of firepower. He'd fire them simultaneously, maximum force, 1 pass, no second chances. Rosie shook so hard he could barely keep her level, using throttle and aileron to aim the entire plane. No instruments, no precision, just instinct, The same instinct that made him a history teacher who read battlefields like textbooks. He closed in. 140 meters, 130. The Panthers' commander spotted him, head snapping up, hand reaching for his pistol. Too late. At 120 meters, Carpenter pressed the switch. 3 rockets ignited at once, recoil slamming him back, nearly tearing the right wing off. Rosie rolled violently left from unbalanced force. Carpenter fighting the stick with every ounce of strength, knuckles white, shoulders screaming. The wing held. Barely. The 3 rockets converged like a storm, all hitting within 2 seconds. First the turret side, penetrating armor, shaped charge detonating inside. Second the upper hull, tearing thin metal, igniting the fuel tank. Third the track assembly, blast flipping treads sideways. The effect was catastrophic. The Panther's ammo storage exploded, a fireball shooting 50 feet skyward, the tank lifting off the ground from internal pressure, metal and shrapnel flying. The turret separated completely, spinning 30 feet into the grass. The hull split open, red-hot metal peeling back, secondary explosions rocking it for 15 seconds, flames pouring from every opening. Nobody escaped. The last Panther was gone. 4 Panthers total, 2 destroyed, 2 immobilized. 20 American soldiers alive. Carpenter didn't celebrate. He didn't glance back. He turned the dying Rosie west to Lonville. Throttle wide open, the engine making sounds no Continental should. Metal fragments rattling the cowling, oil covering the windscreen, temp gauge breaking, needle falling off the dial. 3 miles to go, 60 seconds of engine life left. Fuel low, plane beyond repair, but he flew for the airstrip, for home, for the ground crew. He had to make it. The engine seized for good 1 mile from Lonville, propeller stopping. Silence fell, Rosie becoming a glider, a terrible glider. Torn fabric, unbalanced weight, damaged frame, never built for unpowered flight. Carpenter trimmed for 65 miles per hour, best glide speed, checking altitude, 800 feet, descent 400 feet per minute. 2 minutes of gliding time, maybe less. Damaged aerodynamics working against him. The airstrip was in sight, runway a thin gray line, ground crew clearing it, fire equipment moving in, lights flashing. But he was too low. His glide angle wouldn't reach the runway. He needed 200 more feet. He didn't have it. Northeast of the runway, a plowed field, soft earth, bad for landing gear, but far better than trees. Carpenter aimed for it, hands steady, breathing slow. The same calm he'd had in the classroom, now guiding a dying plane to a crash landing. 400 feet, 200, 150. The field expanded below, brown and muddy, furrows crisscrossing the dirt. 100 feet, 50. He pulled back gently, flaring the landing, tail wheel touching first, hard jolt, then main gear. Soft earth grabbed the wheels, mud swallowing them. Rosie nosing over, propeller digging into muck, flipping forward and slamming to the ground, inverted. Carpenter hung upside down in his harness, world tilted, the sharp smell of high-octane gasoline filling the cockpit. Fuel leaking from the ruptured tank, engine still hot enough to ignite vapor. Seconds to escape before Rosie burned. He released the harness, dropping to the inverted roof, fuel dripping onto his flight suit. He kicked the side door, jammed, frame bent from impact. He braced his back against the seat, kicked harder, door breaking free with a crack. Carpenter crawled out, rolled clear, scrambled to his feet, running 20 yards before his legs gave out, collapsing in the mud, chest heaving. Ground crew reached him 40 seconds later, fire equipment spraying foam on Rosie, smothering the fuel leak before ignition. Medics checked him. Minor cuts, chest bruises from the harness, sore shoulder. No broken bones, no burns. 47 combat sorties in a bazooka cub, never wounded. The ground crew called him the lucky major. Carpenter called it mathematics. Stay low, attack fast. Never give them a clear shot. It wasn't luck. It was strategy. A history teacher applying war's lessons to win it. September 20th, 1944. 3 sorties, 18 rockets expended, 4 Panthers put out of action, 20 soldiers saved. Rosie the Rocketer was a total write-off. Engine seized from oil loss, wings torn beyond repair, fuselage compromised, fabric scorched and riddled with bullet holes. But the concept worked. Bazookas on observation planes could kill tanks. A 65-horsepower crop duster could stand up to the German Panther, the Western Front's most feared armor. Carpenter's attacks disrupted German coordination in Combat Command A's most vulnerable hours, buying time to dig in, reinforce, hold the line. The Battle of Aracourt raged until September 29th, the German 5th Panzer Army throwing 262 tanks at the American bridgehead, determined to recapture Lonville. When fighting ended, Germany lost 200 tanks destroyed or damaged. The U.S. lost 48. Aracourt became the Western Front's largest tank battle until the Battle of the Bulge 3 months later. A pivotal victory stopping the German advance in France, sparked by a history teacher from Illinois, a bazooka-armed fabric plane, and courage to do what nobody else would. 3 days later, Carpenter got a new L4H Grasshopper, serial 43-30426, with the same mods, 6 M9 bazookas, electronic triggers, the same crew chief, the same name painted bold red on the cowling. Rosie the Rocketer. Between September and December 1944, he flew 63 more bazooka missions, his reputation growing, the Germans naming him Der Verrückte Major, the Mad Major. They changed their doctrine. Stand orders to engage all L4s on site, infantry carrying anti-aircraft with armor, Panther and Tiger commanders posting spotters for Cubs with wing tubes. The harmless spotters were now deadly threats, all because of one man. Official records credited him with 6 tanks destroyed, 2 Tigers, 4 Panthers/Panzer IVs, plus armored cars and soft-skinned vehicles. But ground witnesses said the real number was 14, hard to confirm, as Carpenter attacked miles from U.S. lines, unable to verify kills, flying back only with burning steel as proof. Other L4 pilots copied his mods, but most quit after one mission. Diving a fabric plane into anti-aircraft fire was statistically unsurvivable. Even Merrick and Carson, the original bazooka innovators, returned to reconnaissance, deeming the risk too great. Carpenter disagreed. He kept attacking 63 more times because the war needed to be fought 60 minutes an hour, 24 hours a day. Attack, attack, attack again. His mantra. By December 1944, the 4th Armored Division advanced east through France, pushing to the German border, Carpenter flying with them. General John S. Wood's personal pilot, plus his attack missions. He hit 110 combat sorties total, still never wounded, never shot down, the lucky major flying his lucky plane into the German war machine and emerging unscathed. Then 1945 arrived, and the unthinkable happened. Charles Carpenter got sick. Doctors diagnosed terminal Hodgkin's disease, lymphoma, in early 1945. He was 32, the same age he'd been on that muddy French airstrip. Army physicians gave him 2 years to live. He'd survived 110 sorties, outmaneuvering Panthers, outfighting the German army, and cancer would do what the 5th Panzer Army never could. The Army promoted him to lieutenant colonel, awarding the Silver Star for Valor, Bronze Star with Oak Leaf Cluster, Air Medal with Oak Leaf Cluster. Citations praised his extraordinary heroism and disregard for safety. They didn't mention he was a history teacher who never wanted to be a hero, just a man who couldn't watch brothers die and do nothing. In June 1946, Carpenter received an honorable discharge, returning to Urbana, Illinois, to his wife Elda, 7-year-old daughter Carol, and the classroom he'd left behind. He taught history again, lecturing teens about battles, this time with scars and stories of a man who'd lived them, fought them, changed one of World War II's most important tank battles. The doctors gave him 2 years. 1948 arrived. He was alive, teaching. 1950, alive. 1955, alive. 1940s. Medical science didn't fully understand Hodgkin's, and some patients beat the odds. Charles Carpenter was one of them, outlasting cancer as stubbornly as he'd attacked German tanks, refusing to give up, to die, to let odds defeat him. He taught at Urbana High School for 20 years after the doctors said he'd be dead, a living legend in a small Illinois town, a history teacher who'd made history. Charles Carpenter died on March 22, 1966, at 53, 21 years after his diagnosis, 19 years past the 2-year prognosis. He was buried at Edgington Cemetery, his grave marker listing only his rank, Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army. No mention of Bazooka Charlie, Rosie the Rocketer, or the Mad Major. No 110 sorties, no 6 or 14 tanks destroyed, no 20 soldiers saved at Aracourt. Just a name, dates, and a simple note of service. A quiet end for a man who fought in one of history's bloodiest wars. The second Rosie the Rocketer, serial 43-30426, disappeared after the war, most assuming it was scrapped, lost to time, a World War II relic rusting in a bunker. But in 2017, aviation historians made a startling discovery. The plane was in the Austrian Aviation Museum at Graz's airport, flying in a Vienna civilian club for decades. Nobody knew its history. Nobody knew it was the bazooka-armed grasshopper that destroyed Panthers in France. The Mad Major's plane, the one that turned the tide at Aracourt. In 2018, the Collings Foundation purchased it and began full restoration. One day, this tiny fabric plane that fought the German army will fly again, a testament to one man's courage, ingenuity, and refusal to accept the impossible. Carpenter's innovation didn't survive the war. The bazooka-armed L-4 was too vulnerable for sustained combat. Helicopters replaced observation planes, dedicated ground attack craft replacing improvised weapons like Rosie. But for 4 months in 1944, when American tank crews died against superior German armor, when the Western Front hung in the balance, a history teacher from Illinois climbed into a tiny fabric plane with 6 bazookas and flew into the heart of the German war machine. He did it because somebody had to. He did it because history isn't just something you teach. It's something you make, something you fight for, something you survive against all odds. Charles Carpenter is one of the forgotten heroes of World War II, a man whose story was buried in dusty archives for decades. A man who turned a crop duster into a tank killer and a small French battlefield into a lesson in courage. He wasn't a trained fighter pilot. He wasn't a war hero by choice. He was a teacher who saw injustice, saw his brothers in arms dying, and chose to act. His legacy isn't just in the tanks he destroyed, the soldiers he saved, or the battle he turned. It's in the quiet truth that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. When they refuse to stand by, when they choose to fight, when they believe that even the smallest, unlikeliest weapon can make a difference. Carpenter outlasted cancer, outlasted the odds, outlasted the very machine he fought, all while going back to the classroom to teach the next generation that history is made not just by kings and generals, but by men and women who dare to do what's right, even when it's insane, even when it's suicide, even when the math says you can't win. If this story of the Mad Major and his bazooka-armed grasshopper moved you, hit that like button. Every like tells YouTube to share these forgotten WWII stories with more people. Subscribe and turn on notifications because we're digging into dusty archives every single day, rescuing the stories of heroes like Charles Carpenter, heroes who deserve to be remembered. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Do you have a family member who served in World War II, who fought in France, who did the unthinkable to save others? We want to hear your stories because memory is how we keep these heroes alive. Charles Carpenter didn't want to be a legend. He just wanted to teach history. Instead, he became it. And now, thanks to you, he won't disappear into silence. Thank you for watching. And never forget, the greatest heroes are often the ones nobody expects.